So welcome to our second lecture on Mesilat Yesharim, the path of the just. And I really appreciate everyone who's here on Zoom and everyone who's here, of course, in person. And I want to thank our host, Deanna, who has a wonderful spread here that I can show you all with the camera. Hold on 1 minute, everybody. Okay, so we have all kinds of good stuff. And we're starting from the I'm going to start from the paragraph. I might overlap a little bit, and like I announced to everyone before I started recording, next week I'm going to give an announcement from as many different versions of Mesilat Yesharim, exactly what page and paragraph we're at. Since I didn't prepare that this week, you'll have to try to follow in the English and try to figure out exactly where I am, but I'm about 5 paragraphs into the introduction of the author. We're doing it this way because everyone has a different English translation version in front of them. And for me, I feel like it's important to read the original Hebrew and translate my own translation. I know it might be a little bit clunky. I don't know what the right term is, but his Hebrew is so beautiful and it's his original language. So I just feel it would be a shame not to read it. So that's why I'm doing it that way. But so we're starting the Kevon Shekivar hit amet etzel chol chacham, and since any intelligent person knows, right, tzorach temimot havoda, how important it is that one must serve God with purity, v'chovat taharatav v'nikyona, and the obligation to do it in a proper, pure way. Shezulat ela eina nirtzat badai klal, because any logical person understands that without doing it with purity of heart, it's not desirable. It's not good. It's not desirable to God. Elanim eset umitoevet. It's disgusting, right? It's something that's despised. Kichol levavot doresh Hashem, because, and this is a verse from Divrei Yamim, from the Book of Chronicles. All hearts seek out God. B'chol yetzer machshavot umeven. I'm doresh Hashem. God seeks out. Sorry, and every all of the things we know who maven, God understands. In other words, when we are approaching God in our service of Him, He knows what's in our hearts and in our souls. He's not just looking at our actions. So if we just stand there and do stuff, but we don't mean it, then it means nothing, right? Then what's the point, right? So, and that's just logical. It's obvious. Anyone that thinks for a second about spirituality realizes that rote actions with no meaning behind them are meaningless. So manena, what will we therefore answer biyom tochecha, on the day of rebuke? Now, I'm going on a tiny little tangent for a second. When he says manana, what will we answer? Or it could be, what will we say on the day of rebuke? So on the simple level, what this sounds like is he's saying, one day we're going to stand in front of God in judgment, and we're going to have to answer for ourselves. And if we lived our whole lives a meaningless life and all we did was rituals with no meaning, then what are we going to say when God tells us, how did you serve me? But the Mesilat Yesharim, the Ramchal, chose the word Yom Tochecha, which is a specific word. He could have used Yom Hadin, the day of judgment, which is a much more common term. But he specifically chose a term that's not used that often, in Yom Tochecha. Now, the term Yom Tochecha shows up in 2 places in Tanakh. And I think he's really giving us a very, very special hint here. Because what he's talking about here is the meaning behind what we do, right? God doesn't want us just to do things. He wants us to understand the meaning and purpose.
How does that relate to, I may be pronouncing this wrong, but kavanah?
It relates very much. Kavanah meaning intent, right? So just to do something without fulfilling its intent and without having intent is meaningless, and that's what he's saying. It's worse than meaningless. It's disgusting. Like if imagine if somebody works for you and they do a job, but they don't really care about the job, right? Obviously, it doesn't mean anything, or worse. So there's 2 places where it turns up, this term Yom Tochecha. One is in Hosea, in the book of Hosea, which is one of the minor prophets, Hosea 5, where it says there, he uses the term Yom Tochecha, right? And over there, he is criticizing, the prophet is criticizing the people of Ephraim, the people of the northern kingdom of Israel. And he says over the preceding that verse where he says, what will we answer on the day of Tochecha? The prophet it criticizes them. He says, Bitzonam uvivkaram yelchu levakesh es Hashem. They come out with their sacrifices, with their sheep and their cattle, right? They come to give sacrifices to seek out God, right? But they don't find him because and he's criticizing them. They're coming with their sheep and their cattle. Now they're coming to do the rituals of the temple, the sacrifices. Today's equivalent would be they're coming to synagogue to do all the prayers and to bow when they're supposed to bow and to repeat when they're supposed to repeat and sing when they're supposed to sing. But there's no heart, there's no meaning behind it. And that is specifically what Hosea is criticizing when he says, what will they answer biyom tochecha, on the day of tochecha? And I going to retranslate the term tochecha, right, which is not so much the day of rebuke, but tochecha is comes from the Hebrew language lehitvakeach, to argue, to discuss, to debate, right? So in other words, when God is going to ask you the meaning of what you're doing, he's going to want to know. But it's not so much worrying about the day we're going to stand before God, although that's, you can think about that if you want to. But how are you going to answer for yourself? Like, how are you going to explain yourself if you're just doing things with no meaning? The second place where it shows up is also very similar, where it's in the book of Isaiah, where he talks about where Hezekiah, the story is told in both the book of Isaiah and in the book of Kings, where the Assyrian army had surrounded Jerusalem, and Rabshakeh, who was the head of the Assyrian army, was screaming over the walls and telling the people, God's not going to help you because you took down all of the places of Hezekiah beforehand had taken down all of the other places of worship and directed everyone to the temple itself, right, for worship. And he so Rav Shakeh said, you're not bringing enough sacrifices to your God. How is he going to save you, right? So and Chizkiyahu, Hezekiah responds and gets worried, and he calls it a Yom Tochecha, a day of argument, right? Because the argument that Isaiah, the prophet who had led the people, had been making was, it has nothing to do with how many sacrifices we bring. It has to do with how we truly worship God for real. So the Ramchal here chooses this language, Yom Tochecha, for a very specific reason, because it's specifically discussing the reasoning, the meaning behind the mitzvot, the meaning behind what we're doing, right? So what are you going to answer? What are you going to say when you ask to explain why you did what you did, right? Or why did you act this way? What are you going to say then? So that's why he chooses this language. So then he says, if you don't think about it, if we're going to be lazy, if we're going to be remiss in our study of these issues, right? And we ignore and we leave aside something which is so obligatory to us. It's something that we so necessarily must do. It's the main thing that God is asking from us. Is it right? Is it normal? Is it okay that we should spend all of this effort trying to learn and study things which we're not even obligated to study? We don't even need to. And here he's criticizing specifically the study of the areas of the Torah where we study, we spend so much time trying to study exactly how many minutes do I need to before matzah becomes chametz, and how many, exactly what time Shabbat starts. Is it 18 minutes? Is it 17 minutes? Is it 7:02? Is it 7:04? Right? Do I need to bring, do I have 3 matzahs or 2 matzahs or 1 or 12 or 6, or the mezuzah is shaped this way, that way? We spend all this time studying things, right? No fruit comes from them. Sometimes we waste our time arguing over little details that nothing comes from them. And sometimes we spend so much time studying laws that aren't even relevant to us. But that which we are obligated to our Creator, a great obligation, something that's so important, right? Na'azveu lehergel, we leave it to just to rote, right? V'nanicheu lemitzvahs anashim l'moda, and we just leave it to things that people do just as they do because they do them and they don't even think about them. Okay? In lo nistakalnu, if we haven't looked into, if we haven't thought about it, right? V'lo iyananu, and we didn't delve into it, right? Or study mahi hayira hamitis. What is true yira? What is true awe of God? What does it mean to fear God? Umanafel, and what are the ramifications of it? What are the things that are related to yira? What's it about? What does it mean? Right? So how are we supposed to acquire something if we never bothered to think about what it is in the first place? Right? If fear of God, if awe of God is so important, and we never even spent 5 seconds to figure out what it is, how are we supposed to achieve it? How can we save ourselves from all of the vanity that exists in the world around us? Which is constantly pushing these things out of our hearts. It's constantly making us forget that which is so important. Even though we know, everybody knows you're supposed to fear God, right? But if we don't, but we know it, but nonetheless, we just it will be forgotten because we won't know. Now I'm going to stop for a minute and I want to ask everyone, what do you think it means to fear God? What does that mean? Let's just go ahead.
I read something actually in the Musar kind of context where it talked about humility, and the fear of God is being in awe of God. And so when you actually translated it to awe, fear and awe, I really like that.
Yeah.
So just being in kind of standing before something that you don't understand, but it's so big and beautiful.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, okay, I like that. That is beautiful, and that's why I chose the term awe. And awe is a much better translation of yira in this context than fear, because that is really the bottom line. So how can we be in awe of the greatness of God if we don't spend any time thinking about the greatness of God, right? And the smallness, the humbleness of ourselves, right? If and how do we achieve that? Well, hopefully throughout this book, we're going to learn from the Ramchal how do we achieve it, or how he advises for us to achieve that. There's a hand up, so go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, recognize his existence.
Recognizing God's existence.
Recognize that, because you can't fear something that you don't recognize exists. So the first step is to recognize he exists. The second step is figure out what to do with that recognition.
So that's very good. So it comes in steps. It comes in steps, and that's it. This book is designed exactly that way, and we're going to see it if we ever get to the end of the Hakdama today, of the introduction, right? Then we'll see he's going to lay out the steps for us to achieve that. So that's very good. And yeah, I would agree that recognizing that he exists is certainly necessary as a first step. I think someone wanted to say something.
I agreed with.
You agree? Okay. So we have a couple of votes for Billy's idea that it's awe of the greatness of God and being humble before him.
Humble.
Right. Yeah. Okay, but so then the other thing, right, is ha'ava, the love of God, is usually presented as the corollary to awe of God. Right? And if we don't try, if we don't work to implant it in our hearts, by using every means that we have within our reach to bring us to love of God, how could we find that love within us? Whatever tools we have available to us to use to achieve love of God, right? How are we supposed to achieve it, right? If we don't try, if we don't figure out, if we don't learn how. Me'ayin yavo hadvekos, from where will come the dvekos is attachment. Now this is where he's allowing his Kabbalistic roots to shine through. The idea of dvekos, the idea of attachment to God. Not that of course it shows up in non-Kabbalistic areas too, but it's a steady theme in the Kabbalistic.
Hey, everyone.
Say again? I'm sorry, I thought someone wanted to say something. Everyone can speak up whenever they want to, but I muted it so that we don't get. So v'hitlahat tut v'ha'atlatut, and the I'm trying to think, the ardor is what he uses, the burning fire of desire to be close to God, in our souls, imo yisparach, for him may be blessed, im Torah so, and with his Torah and with his teachings, im lo nisha el gedula so, if we don't turn towards and pay attention to his greatness, Viel Romamuso, and his loftiness, Asher Yolid Bilibenu Advekus Azeh, which will also implant in our hearts, right? This attachment, this desire for attachment to God. So that same greatness of God, which leads to awe, also leads to love, right? And how are we supposed to achieve these things if we don't try? And in order to try, we need to know what we're trying to achieve. We have to study it. We have to learn about it. How can we purify our thoughts? If we don't try to cleanse our hearts of all of the flaws, right, that our human nature puts within us, right? We have all these flaws. We have pride, right, which is the opposite of humility, which disables us from seeing that there's a power that's so much greater than us that we can't even imagine. We have pride in ourselves, which disables us from appreciating and loving God, because we don't appreciate the beauty of the world that He gave us when we think we all achieved it for ourselves, right? We have all kinds of desires that lead us to ignore, right, the path to God, and instead follow our own selfish paths. So if we don't work on it, how are we supposed to get there? Vihamidos, and all of the good properties that a person needs, all of the good character traits, kulam hatzrichos kol kach tikun v'hayeshar, they all need so much of work to mend our ways and straighten them. Mi Yesharim, who will straighten our ways? Umi yitakneim, who will fix them? Im lo nasim lev aleim, if we don't pay any attention to them, and we're not careful about them in a very exacting way. Right? If we will look at this properly with a true and study of truth, like we really truly look at it in an honest way, that's then, only then, we could find it in its proper way. And then we will be doing good for ourselves. And then, of course, doesn't end with ourselves. If we achieved it truthfully, we would extend it beyond ourselves and teach it to others, and then help them as well. We're going to see that even though the Mesilat Yesharim in general, the whole book is about self-improvement, he always throws in this point that self-improvement always ends in spreading that to other people, right? It never ends with yourself, right? Self-improvement is the primary objective of the work, because that's what you and I have to do, is we have to work on ourselves. But he always is going to throw it in, and you'll see even in the Hakdama, I'll point it out when it pops up again. He'll talk a lot about improving yourself, and then he'll say, and then it's to benefit us and benefit the people around you, and in fact the entire world. Hu Masha Amar Shlomo, this, what I'm telling you now, that we're supposed to seek it and study it and learn about it, read about it and think about it, contemplate it, and then turn it into action, make ourselves better. This is what Shlomo meant, Solomon meant, when he said the following verse in Proverbs: if you seek it like you seek silver, and you search it out like you search for a treasure, oz tovin yirat Hashem, that is when you will understand what true awe of God is. If you seek it, that's when you'll find it. But if you don't, trust me, there are enough distractions in the world around you to make sure that you think about just about everything else except for that, right? And I'm sure all of us have went through many days where we didn't consider this for 1 second, because we had all kinds of wonderful nonsense to occupy our time with, right? So, Eino Omer, he does not state Oz Tavin Philosophia, that then you will understand philosophy, or Oz Tavin Tichuna, or then you will understand astronomy, or Oz Tavin Refuah, or then you will understand the science of medicine, or Oz Tavin Dinim, then you will understand the the laws of halacha, right? Or oz tavin halachot, right? I mean, dina meaning law and halachot meaning halacha. Ella, what he says is oz tavin yirat Hashem. What do you need to seek out like a treasure? Not all of those other things, but specifically the awe of God. And so specifically, Harelecha, you see here from the words of Solomon in Proverbs, Shelahavin Hayira, in order to understand awe of God, it takes more than the other things. The other thing, astronomy, of course, you have to work at it. You have to learn it. And he's not saying it's not important to learn astronomy. It's great, learn it. But there's a book about astronomy, or nowadays a website or whatever. You open it up, you read it, you learn it, you understand it, and you got it, right? Or you go to a class, a lecture, whatever, and you learn it. But for yira, for awe, you have to seek it like you seek out silver. You have to seek it like a treasure, because it's not, because as we see people, we tend to ignore it. We know it exists and that's it, and we ignore it. We have to search, seek it like silver, and seek it out like treasure. Is it enough just because we learned from our parents that we're supposed to fear God? Is that enough? The song that we sang in kindergarten about God is here, God, Hashem is here, Hashem is there. I don't know, I remember. Hashem is truly everywhere, right? You know, is it enough that we had that somebody taught us once that God exists and we're supposed to fear him? And that anyone who's religious knows, yeah, there's a God. Is that enough? Is that enough to announce, I believe in God? Okay, great. But what does that mean, right? That's not enough. That doesn't do anything for you, right? Should it be true that we should have so much time to study and read everything? We can scroll TikTok for hours, right? But no time to bother thinking about God, right? Right? Why shouldn't the person set aside for himself just at least a little bit of times that he sets aside or she sets aside to look into this? Right? If he has to spend the rest of his time to be involved in other things and in other areas, be it the things that he needs to use to make a living or other things that he or she is interested in, it's fine, but at least a little bit of time set aside to think about God, right? To think about yira, to think about the fear of God, to think about the awe of God, and so on. Vihine. And furthermore, so just like he brought a verse before that talks about we have to seek yira, we have to seek awe of God, the right? And now he's going to bring up, so what do you mean? Someone might object and say like this, right? Why do I have to study it? What do you mean you're writing a book about fearing God? You just said the whole thing. Be humble. God is great. He's mighty. He created the world. He's powerful. He's awesome. He made flowers and trees. I fear him. I'm humble. Okay, done. Finished. Right? What do I need? Right? How much do I need to read about that? Okay, fine. Show me a nice picture of a mountain and a river, and good, I'm done, right? So that's not, no, but he's saying this next verse is coming to fend off that attack, right? It says, the pasuk says, the verse says, and this is from Eov, from the book of Job, Hein yirat Hashem hi chachma. All of God is wisdom. And right, wisdom, the Amar Rabbi Seinu Zichron Levracha, what does it mean, Hein? Hein means achas. Hein is, I think it's Greek for the word number one, if I remember correctly. And this is from the Talmud and the Gemara in Shabbos and Shabbat. Haresha hayira hi chachma v'hi levado chachma. Hein means one, because what is wisdom? The only thing that can really be called wisdom is is fear of God, is awe of God, right? You can't call something wisdom if it's not something that requires means study, right? Study and work, right? Because you can't call you don't call a wise person somebody who knows that the grass is green. You call a wise person somebody who can explain to you, the chlorophyll in the grass and the reactions that a photosynthesis, and who memorized the Krebs cycle. That you can say he's wise, right? But the guy that tells you the grass is green, that's not very wise, right? So it takes time, it takes study, it takes work. So the Gemara, the Chazal, the rabbis are teaching us specifically that the only thing that's really considered wisdom is fear of God, right? So no, it's not just enough to say, okay, I fear God, He's great, I'm little, fine. That's not enough. You have to really, really think about it. You have to work on it. You have to really understand it. The truth is kiyun gadol, right? It takes a tremendous amount of analysis and study. Tzarech hakol advarim is necessary on all of these things. Ladaso, some of them is to know them truthfully. Remember, this is, I think, the third or fourth, maybe even more than that time when he threw the word emes in there, to know it truthfully, to know it for real, right? Fake news isn't going to cut it, right? Listening to somebody just babble is not going to cut it, right? To actually know it, to know it truthfully, to really know it, it takes work. A soundbite, a meme is not going to do it for you, right? What's going to do it for you is real work. That's how to find truth. Truth doesn't come in a soundbite. Truth is going to come hopefully from our classes, which are going to take us a long, long time, right? Truth will come from things, from those kinds of endeavors where you really listen to all different kinds of perspectives and ideas, and you put something together that's real. Not through just imagining things or somebody explaining to you a bunch of false notions, right? Kol shekain, certainly liknos also malasigam. Certainly, if you really want to understand them and acquire them as part of your personality, that doesn't just come quickly. Umishi is bonin bam, and somebody who thinks about them, yireh, he'll see. Sheina chasidus, true piety is not totally b'osam advarim sheyachshu hamitchastim atipshem. True piety is not dependent on those things that those foolish people that act in a pious way think they're pious, right? We can think of many, many examples, all of us, from our own personal lives and from public lives. People who walk around pretending they're pious, think they're pious, talk about how pious they are, but we all know that they're foolish, right? Or worse than foolish, right? It has nothing to do with piety. Somebody all of a sudden becomes pious because he claims that God made him something, right? That's just foolish. It doesn't work that way. Right? It comes through true shleimus, perfection, the chachma raba, and it comes with real wisdom. This is what our teacher Moshe, right, taught us when he said the following. And this is an interesting verse because the verse says, I'll read the whole thing. V'ata, and now, Israel, Ma Hashem what is it that God asks from you? All he's asking is that you should fear the Lord your God. And then he continues, Moshe says, to go in all of his ways. So it may not be quoted in all of your versions, but I'm just quoting the whole verse. To go in all of his ways, to walk in his ways, and to love him, and to worship the Lord your God, with your entire heart, and your entire soul, to keep and observe the commandments of God, and his laws, that I'm commanding you today, so that it should benefit you. That's the whole verse. It's a little funny because Moshe says all he's asking for you is to fear God, and then he lists a long list of things, which is
and these
right,
other things.
right, which is not such a small list. Most of us are struggling at point one, and he is already running on to the whole things. But so the Ramchal isn't going to zero in so much on that, but he's zeroing in on the idea that all of those specifics are details of awe of God. Everything else is boiled down. How do you know it? Right? You have to walk in his ways, right? And he's going to explain a little bit in a minute what that means, walk in his ways, but I'll just give you a spoiler. You walk in his ways. You if he's merciful, you're merciful. If he's kind, you're kind. If he's empathetic, you're empathetic, and so on, right? And you keep his and you love him and you serve him with your entire heart, entire soul, meaning you do it for real, with integrity and honesty, and so on and so forth. And all of that will be good for you. That's how you achieve awe. So it is a lot of work, right? The point is all God wants from us is awe, but it's a lot of work to get there. And that's the work that he's going to try to teach us to do. Khan, in this verse, Moshe included all of the parts that are necessary for a complete worship of God, which is desirable by God, may be blessed. And what are those things? And he kind of summarizes: Hayira, awe of God, Halicha b'drachav, going in his ways, Ha'ava, love of God, Shleimus alev, integrity of your heart, Ushmiras kol mitzvos, and keeping all of God's commandments. And he's going to boil down now. He's going to elaborate a little bit on each one of those points. So now he's going to give us our answer. We said that we'll see if Billy was right, or if Jeffrey was right about what awe is. So what is awe? Is awe of the greatness or the majesty, his blessed majesty. He should be afraid, and he'd be in awe before him. And he uses a metaphor which would have been relevant in his time, but it's not so relevant in our time, right? Which is the same way someone would be in the awe if he was appearing before a great and awesome king, right? V'yevosh migedula so, and a person who then therefore becomes humbled from his greatness. Al kol tenua shehu balis noea, right? Whenever you're about to do the tiniest movement, the tiniest everything, right? In other words, we usually when we're about to do something, when we're about to accomplish or achieve something, we feel a little bit of what's often called confidence or pride. I'm about to do, whatever it is that we feel like we're experts in, whatever we all do with our day, right? But if you're thinking that you're in front of God all the time, I mean, there's nothing that we can do that's even a millionth of a millionth of a millionth of a millionth of what God achieved in creation of the entire universe around us. If you feel that way, then you feel humble in every single thing you do. And I give an example in a second, but let me finish the paragraph. And certainly when we're engaging in what we pretend or assume is worship of God himself in prayer or studying his Torah, certainly there we should feel humble. But we should feel humble in everything we do. So I just started a new job a few weeks ago. And for those that don't know, I'm an OBGYN. And when I get to the new hospital, so I have to learn the new computer system, right? Which is, every time you learn a new medical record system in a new place, it's a big fat mess, whatever. So I have to learn this, how to put in orders, how to write notes, how to get labs, how to all these things. So one of the things that I have to always do is after I do a procedure, a surgery or delivery, I have to write an op note, right? So in which I describe what I did, right? So it's a narrative, it's a story, right? I did this, I did this, I did that. Blah, blah, blah. Now, I was trained by a really, really great surgeon who was a very, very humble person. And he always taught us that when we write our op notes, you never use the word I, right? And he told us, because you're not the one doing the surgery. Every single person in the room was doing the surgery. Your assistant, the anesthesiologist, the anesthesia tech, the nurse who's circulating, the nurse who prepared the room, the people that admitted the patient, everyone's doing the surgery. Never use the word I. You always write your notes in third person. So you always say, this was done, and then this was done, and then that was done, and then this decision was made, and then this finding was found, and then this, and so on. That's how you write your notes. That's how I was taught. And I always thought that's a tremendous lesson of humility when you go into a room and you realize that it's not me, because the truth is it's not just me. Yes, I'm the surgeon, whatever, but without everything else, I'd be nobody, right? I can't do anything without everyone's contribution here. So when I went into the new system, so there was a woman who was teaching me how to use the new system. So she says, well, we have pre-done templates for all these different procedures that other doctors have already prepared, and you can take those, modify it a little bit the way you like it, and then you can put it in as a template, and then all you have to do is just hit a button, and then the template goes in. You put in the few numbers and names, and you're good to go. You don't have to sit and write the whole thing or dictate the whole thing. So I said, fine. So she shows me lists from 2 doctors, right? And I pulled a hysterectomy procedure from one doctor and a hysterectomy procedure from another doctor, because I wanted to compare to see which one I wanted to take. And without going into too much, well, one guy writes, I did this, and I did that, and I did this, and I did that, and I did this, and I did that, I did it, I did that. And literally the arrogance just shone forth from the paper. And I'm just looking at it, I'm like getting nauseous. And how do you get nauseous from reading a stupid op note? Nobody reads the stupid thing anyway, except for God forbid, a lawyer maybe one day. But I mean, somebody, but it gets nauseating. It's like, and then another person wrote exactly a beautiful note. It was exactly the way it should be written. This was done, and this was done, and that was done, and that was done. And that's what I was thinking of when I'm reading this here. That I'll call to Nuasha, but every movement that we make, we feel humble. Everything we do. If you realize that it's not just you, every single thing that we do every single day is a reflection of every input that was into our lives, every person that taught us what we know, every teacher that taught us how to speak, how to write, how to drive, how to talk, and whatever skill it is that we're putting, all the professors that we had, everyone that gave us the licenses that we have, or whatever, our credentials, our whatever helped us, in our family lives, whoever gave us the confidence, every single thing we do, it's not just us. And then Allah has come, how much more so that all of that is due to what God gave us. So how humble should we be in every single call to Nuah, and every little movement that we start to shake a little bit? We have to think where it comes from. So that's yira, that's awe. It's the feeling of humility before God, and it's the kind of humility that we should feel in every single thing we do. So the second thing he says, that Moshe said, first he said yira, and what did it take to have awe of God? The first thing he said was ha'alicha bidrachav, going in his ways. What does that mean, going in God's ways? Now, if you think to the Bible, who's the first person who it says went in God's ways? It was really Noah, right? Well, that walked with God or went with God, right? So what does that mean? He went with God. What does that mean? So he's going to explain. Kol inyan yosher amidos v'tikunam. This refers to all of the character traits and proper character traits. So that's the first thing you have to do. It doesn't say you have to put on the nicest tefillin or wear the longest tzitzis or have the longest beard, right? It says you have to have, the number one is going in God's ways, having proper character traits. And that's what our rabbis explained, may their memories be blessed. Mahu racham, just as God is merciful, afata racham, you should also be merciful, and so on. Uklal calls that, right? And the general idea behind all of this, because he's not going to go into it in all of its detail, we have a whole book for that, right? But he's just summarizing what it is now. Sheyinag ha'adam kol midosav, a person should act in all of his traits, in all of his ways, l'chol minei pulosav, in everything that he does, al pi hayosher, according to what is proper, musar, and that which is virtuous. And there's various ways to translate those two terms. So and the bottom line is, and I tell this to people, and I think this through, and I try my best to live this way, because we all come up with dilemmas in lives, ethical dilemmas. What should we do? When the bottom line is yosher, what's the right thing to do, right? And that's how we should act in our lives. Do the right thing. Don't think about, what's going to give me the most profit, what's going to give me that. What's the right thing to do in everything? What's yosher v'musar? That's the bottom line of midos tovos, of proper character traits, right? Uklal chachamenu zechronim levracha, and the rule that our rabbis gave us, may their memory be blessed, right, was the following. It's the Mishnah in Avot. For those that learn, now we're in the time of year where we learn one chapter of the Mishnah in Avot a week. This was a chapter from not this past Shabbos, but 2 weeks ago, where it says, what is the proper path a person should choose? Kol shi tiferet lo oseh, anything which brings honor to those that do it, but tiferet lo min adam, and other people, it brings honor to you from others. In other words, if you really don't know, right, what's the right thing, think for a moment. Does this bring you honor? Does this make you, and it doesn't mean it in a vain kind of honor. It means like, when you walk out, will you feel good about yourself, right? That you did it, right? That's Tiferes Lo Oseh. And Tiferes Lo Min Adam, if you ask someone else, did I do the right thing? Yeah, they'll tell you did the right thing. And 99 times out of 100, that's a pretty good way to figure out what the right thing to do is. If a foreign government offers you a $400 million airplane and you're the president, right? The right thing to do, we know what the right thing to do is. It's not a question. If you just stop for a minute and think, what's the right thing to do? The answer is obvious. And if you do something else, then you're not doing the right thing. Um, the even if you can come up with 750 million reasons why, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is, what's yosher, what's proper. The hainu kol haolech el tachlit hatava amitis. The path that leads to true goodness, right? Not fake goodness, not goodness that's built on lies, but true goodness. What's the path that's going to lead to true goodness, right? The hainu shetolad ta. Look at the results of your action. What will the results of your action be? Will it be corruption? Will it be undue influence? Will it be making decisions that aren't in the best interest of the people you're supposed to make decisions for? Well, then it's not leading in the right direction, right? However, and think about this for a minute, because I deliberately chose the example of the airplane, and you'll see why in a minute. The result is chizuk haTorah, strengthening the Torah in the world. In other words, people will look and see and know that the Torah leads in the right direction. V'tikun achvat hamedinot. And he jumps in, and it will bring about love among the nations, peace in the world between nations, right? So here's another place, and you'll see he does this often, where he's talking so much about personal development, and then he jumps into the peace on earth, right? So
Goodwill towards man.
Yeah, yes, and he throws those in because, to be honest, this book is not about peace on earth, right? It's about us developing ourselves. But he wants to remind us that when we do ourselves the right thing, we do bring the entire world before people that are directly around us, and literally nations depend on it. And if you think that way, then you'll know what to do in the example that I gave before, right? What will bring peace on earth closer? If that's what's driving your decisions, then you'll make the right decision. So that's halicha b'drochav. That's going in God's ways, right? Ha'ava, what's love? She'iyah nikba belev ha'adam. I'm going to finish this chapter tonight, even if I go over an hour. I apologize, okay? Because I really want to finish this hakdama, the introduction tonight. What's love? She'iyah nikba belev ha'adam, that it should be fixed or set in the heart of the human being. Ava, a love towards him, yisparach, maybe less. Ad she'titz orer nafsho, to the extent. What does love mean? Love means that it inspires one's heart, one's soul, lasos nachas ruach lefanav, to do that which brings pleasure to the one who he loves, right? So the definition of love here means, right, that your feelings towards that person cause you to do something, right? It causes you to act in ways that brings happiness to the person that you love. So that's the love between people. How much more so love to God, right? You want to do things that bring pleasant, that God will approve of. That, so if someone says they love you and then they act cruelly towards you, that's the contradiction in terms, right? Love means you act in such a way that you bring the other person happiness. Like naturally, people want to act, hopefully in a healthy family, want to act in such a way that brings their parents pleasure. You want to act in such a way that your parents you'll come home and they'll say, you did a great job in school, good for you, so on, right? You'll make them happy, right? And they'll have pain, right? If you don't act in such a way, right? Or from others, they'll be angry about it. However, but they'll be very, very happy, right, if they do something the way we described it. So that's ahava, that's love, right? Shleimus alev. So that's the ahava which Moshe was talking about when he said, what does God want from you, right? The next thing he said was shleimus halev, right? It said, remember, it said, you should worship God with all of your heart and all of your soul. What does it mean, all of your heart, right? And here he uses the term which Billy mentioned before, the term of kavanah. Right? That the worship that you do in front of God should be with pure intent, right? Not for ulterior motives. It should be with pure intent. The purpose of your worship should be because you want to worship, right? and but not because you have other goals and other objectives. You don't worship God because you want to get goods from him. You don't worship God because you want things to be good tomorrow, because you want to win the lottery, you want to get that job. Doing a mitzvah because you think you're going to get some extra credits in the bank, that's not going to work, right? That's not the point. The point is you do it because you love God and you want to, right? And included in this is the idea that when we worship God, you have to be complete and whole. And not like someone who literally, that translates to jumping on two opinions. Jumping on two opinions, it's a reference that comes from the book of Kings, the story of Elijah on Mount Carmel, where he tells the people they're worshiping God one day, they're worshiping Baal the next day, one day they're this, one day they're that, and so they're jumping back and forth. I want you to think a minute. What's the point of this jumping back and forth? And I'll give an example, right? Sometimes, somebody comes and talks to me as a doctor, and they may talk to you about, some kind of snake oil type remedy for God knows what, right? Whatever, so and so told me, right, that if I do this, it'll be better. So, and then I'll say, I don't know if it works or not. Don't bother with that stuff. There's no evidence for it. There's no nothing. And then they'll say, well, what's the harm in it, right? They'll do it because what could be the harm, right? So, without going to delve into that too much, right? People extend that to what they call spiritual things. I don't think it's spiritual. It's just a bunch of nonsense, right? But using like different kinds of amulets or something. Well, what's the harm in it, right? So I put this red string on my wrist. Well, what could the harm be? It's just the thing. I'm wearing it. Or, somebody told me that if I say this 6 times when I'm going around the table 7 times, then it's going to be better tomorrow. What's the harm in it? So the point is that it's posech al shtei seipim. We don't just jump to things and say, well, maybe this is going to help. Well, maybe that's going to help. If we search for the truth, right, then you do the thing that leads to truth, and that's it, right? Because truth is what matters. Nothing else matters, right? All the other stuff, you don't jump from here to there, from here to there. That's not the truth. That's not the life that God wants us to live. Or the other thing, which is a different problem, but related, is doing things simply by rote, right? You wake up in the morning and you wash your hands and you go to pray in the morning and you don't even think about it. And whatever it is that your rituals are, I'm not here to say what they are, but whatever they are, you just do because you do, because you do, because you do, and then you don't think about it for a minute, right? The idea is that your entire heart has to be in it. If you're doing things just because what's the harm, or you're doing things so on, then your heart's not in it. You're not doing it for real. If you're doing things because it's the truth, right, or because you're seeking truth, then it means something. It's meaningful. And what does it mean? The last one of the requirements was shmirat kol mitzvot, keeping all of the commandments, kimashma'o, right? That consists specifically in, as it says, I don't need to describe it, that is keeping and observing all of the commandments that God gave us according to all of their details. Now, we're getting closer to the end, and he's about to tell us, so how did I structure this book after this introduction? Vihine, kol ele klalim, all of these rules, trichem pirush gadol. I've laid out some basics here, but we have a lot of work to do, right? All right, we need a lot of explanation. And I have found for a statement by our rabbis, may their memory be blessed, they divided these portions in these steps in order. And one step after another, each one getting more and more specific to a final goal. And they are ordered according to a progression, a necessary progression, in order to achieve them. So this saying that he's about to state, and we're going to have a lot of time to think about the statement, because the book is built on this statement, right? On how you can get, if you go through these steps, you can achieve what needs to be achieved. Which is what is mentioned in the Braita. The Braita is written by the same rabbis as the Mishnah, but it wasn't fixed in the Mishnah. When Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, Rabbi Judah the Prince, fixed the Mishnah, he collected the all of the words of the rabbis till of the time, and he set them into what we know as the Mishnah, and all the stuff that was left over was in the Brightot, right? So we still have most of these Brightot, and it's Huav Mekomos Sonim B'Shas, and it's also brought in the Talmud in various places. Ve'achad me'em bePerek Lifnei Eidan, which is in the tractate that deals with idol worship. Selashonim. This is what they say. Mikan Omar Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair. Rabbi Pinchas, the son of Yair, he stated as follows: Torah, studying Torah, mevi l'dei zihirut, brings to zihirut, which is generally translated, I guess, as vigilance. If you see a better translation in your things, tell me. Zihirut mevi l'dei zrizut. Vigilance brings to zrizut, which translates to alacrity, which means, doing things quickly and right with properly right away. Zrizut mevi l'dei nekiyut. Alacrity leads to nikiyut, which literally translates to cleanliness. My translation calls it blamelessness. I don't know. Does anyone have another one? Cleanliness. Yeah, but what doesn't mean here cleanliness like keeping your house clean, which is important, but it means cleanliness such as cleansing the negative things from your heart, from your soul, etc. Nikiyut, cleanliness, mevila de prishut, brings you to literally that means separateness, meaning separating yourselves from evil. Perishut, separateness, mevila de Torah, brings to purity. Tahara, mevila de chasidut, purity brings to piety. See, it takes a lot to get to piety. Just singing really loud in shul is not going to get you to piety, right? Fasting, what is not going to get you to piety. It's a lot of work to get there, right? Chasidut mevila de anava. Piety brings you to humility. Anava mevila de yirat chet. Humility brings you to the fear of sin. Yirat chet mevila de kedusha. That brings you to holiness. Kedusha, holiness, mevila de Ruach HaKodesh, brings you to the Holy Spirit. Ruach HaKodesh mevila de tchiat hamesim. The Holy Spirit brings you to the resurrection of the dead. Now, that's what it's usually translated, right? But the resurrection of the dead, tchiat hamesim, could mean a lot of things. We can talk about it, but I don't want to run too far over time. But I do want to make a point, right? And we're almost done with this introduction. The point here is, all of these things sound very lofty, but he's telling us that we could do it, we could achieve it, we could accomplish it, right? So there's really kind of two sides to the coin, right? One is that we can achieve Ruach HaKodesh, we can achieve it. It's democratizing, right? He's telling every single one of us that if we go through the steps, we can do it, right? He made fun of or swiped the back of the hand at people who had false piety, right? Because they're trying to jump all the way to the front of the line without having worked their way on the line, right? But he is telling us there is a path that we can get there. That's number one. But the other side of the coin is that in order to get there, you have to go through those steps. You can't walk around and claim that you're a holy leader of God if you haven't went through those steps, right? You can't go around and claim that I'm pious, right? And I have Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit comes only if those of us that have studied with me Rambam, Maimonides, makes this point. The Ruach HaKodesh, which is, close to prophecy or maybe even prophecy, depending on how you look at it, that doesn't just happen. It happens when you go through the work, right? Just a random person can't just all of a sudden receive messages from God. And if you think about it, this is a direct argument on certain religious sects, right? Who think that everyone can have visions and speak of God and things like that. It's fine if they want to believe that, but that's not what the Mesilat Yesharim believes is the Jewish teaching, right? These kinds of things happen to the people that earn and achieve them, the wisdom. It doesn't just happen. It doesn't just come. It comes through work. Vehine. And I'll finish this thing, and then we'll hopefully have a few minutes for discussion. I decided to follow this Baraita that I just quoted to you, and that's how I've organized the book that I'm writing. And this is his own humility talking. I wrote it for myself, to teach myself, and also to teach to others. Again, he's hinting to us that work on ourselves, because when we work on ourselves, that will ultimately help us teach others. It's never meant to end with just ourselves, right? And to know ha'avoda hashlema l'madrego sehem, the things that are necessary, the qualities necessary to for complete and true and whole worship of God according to their steps and stages. And I will explain in each of these levels the issues, the details, the halakha, pratav, and how to divide it up into its categories and so on. Haderach liknoso. So I will explain to you how to achieve that level. Umahe mafsidav, and what are the things that are going to keep you away from? What are the obstacles that are going to get in your way as you're trying to achieve them? V'haderach l'shamer mehem, and how to be careful not to fall into those and get stuck on those obstacles. Ki ekra bo ani, right? Because right, when I read this, right, and anyone else who enjoys this book and finds this a good book, right? In other words, so he's saying, I'm writing this for myself to read so that I can achieve these levels, and I'm writing it for anyone that likes this book, enjoys this book, and also gains from it. Leman nilmat, so that we together, he's inviting us to read this book together. He's reminding us that when he's not preaching to us and telling, I got to the last level already, I'm done. So here I'm telling you the path how to get to where I am. No, he's saying, I'm working with you. I'm standing with you. I'm holding your hand throughout this entire book as you work through each level, because I'm doing it too, he's reminding us. I also have to go through these levels. I'm also working on it, which means it's always a work in progress. It's not like we okay, step one, done, chuck it off. Now I'm up to step two. It doesn't work that way. We're always doing everything. Leman nilmad, in order that we can truly learn liyiras Hashem Elokeinu, to truly have awe of the Lord our God. And we should not forget our obligations to Him. And that the materiality of our human nature, it's constantly trying to get this out of our hearts. Reading this book and looking into this book will remind us, will pull us out of that mundane, all that stuff that tries to keep us away. It'll pull us out and remind us, be irenu, and awaken us and remind us of that which we are commanded to do. And then he ends with a little prayer, and God should be our support, and He should guard our feet from falling into traps. And God should fulfill within us the request that the Meshorer of the beloved singer, the one who is beloved to his God, of course that means David, right? Horeini Adonai darkecha, God, show me, teach me your way, your path. Ahalech ba'amitacha, I will go in your truth. There again, he's choosing a verse that discusses truth. Yached levavai, right? Designate my heart, liyira shemecha, to fear, to have awe of your name. Amen ken yiratzon, amen, so shall be your will. So that is his the introduction. And it is definitely appropriate to say amen to that. So keep past the water, please. So we open the floor for comments, questions, observations. Go ahead. I see a hand up.
Yeah. So Jeff Burt, which English translation would you recommend most? I have a copy in my library, but I don't know if the one is the best. What would be the best one in your opinion?
Well, I can't say that I've read them all.
Okay.
But I will say that based on my discussion with my dad, who
that's good enough for me.
Right, who hasn't either read them all, he told me to get the Mordechai Kaplan one. Now it's going to be in a little bit older style English because he wrote it in, I think, the 1930s. But my father says that that's the one you should get, and that's the first English translation. And whatever you think about Mordechai Kaplan and his philosophy, put it aside, he was certainly a scholar of worth and note. So his translation is a translation of Mesilat Yesharim. It's a good one. So that's the one he recommended.
Just a follow-up question. How did the author get in such trouble? I know from earlier classes that he was controversial. If you could give us what got him in trouble.
Well, I mentioned it at length in the first one, so you should go back to that. The very short version is his mystical inclinations because he was a significant Kabbalist, caused people to suspect that he was a Sabbatean. He was a believer,
Oh.
even though there was never any evidence that that was the case. But that's how. But the details I discussed a lot last time.
I'll listen to it. Thank you.
Any other observations? The people here, the people on Zoom, people in cyberspace. All right. If not, then it'll be 2 weeks from now. And for those that are physically here, we'll have to announce on the various chats when and where we're going to be doing it. And once again, I really want to thank Deanna, our host tonight. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
So that Jeff, are you